Hey, welcome to the Steve and Crypto Show, brought to you by thestevestrout.com. I feel like we forget to mention that half the time, but it's okay. Y'all know where to find us. I'm Steve.
I'm Crypto Zoo.
So how are you guys doing? We have a pretty exciting episode. We have some special guests. I mean, all our guests are special, but
Yeah.
this episode we are talking to a pretty prolific comic writer named Cullen Bunn, who is working with a friend of ours, Blacky Shepherd, who is a great comic artist who I feel like will be a freaking household name in a very soon. But they are working together on a comic. It's a ReAnimator sequel based on the original Lovecraft short story, not the movie. They have a crowdfunding campaign going for it on Indiegogo, which we discussed and about them working together, their history working together, and share some good stories. And it was a really fun conversation that we're excited to share with you guys. But that's what's going on this episode. And if you enjoy it and you enjoy prior episodes and what we're trying to do here, maybe you might be interested in checking out our Buy Me a Coffee page. It's at buymeacoffee.com/SteveCrypto. And you could contribute a little something or buy us a coffee. Minimal amounts. It's basically like you're tipping us or something. If you enjoy the show, it's all going to help us improve the show and improve our gear. And maybe even if we feel it's worth it, we might do some advertising. Just to get us out there and make the best show possible for you guys.
Yeah. Like Steve just said, we just want to improve the listening experience for all of you. Who knows, down the road we might be doing some video stuff as well, but we kind of are working with what we have right now to provide you this show. And any little contribution definitely
can't do
helps.
it without you guys.
That's right. We definitely cannot do it without you guys. And otherwise, if you aren't listening, we're just sitting here talking to each other. So we really appreciate anybody who is listening and tuning into the Steve and Crypto Show. Anyone who's contributing to buy us a coffee already, thank you very much. It's definitely going to a good place. It allows us to just keep this show going and to improve our gear, as Steve was saying, and to add more episodes in the future. Speaking of episodes, I believe this is episode 14 or 15 we're doing right now. 15?
15.
15. So
15
we have
episodes. You believe that? I didn't think we'd last this long.
I know. Yeah, we're doing pretty well, I'd say. And so, there's 14 other episodes before this you can go and check out in the archives. The last two we did, we talked with Michelle Cool.
Amy Cool.
Amy Cool. I'm sorry. Amy Cool.
Amy.
Sorry, Amy. Amy Cool. From the Westtown Film Festival, which was featuring previously known as the Port Orchard Film Festival. And so we talked about that one and how it's basically a free festival this year. It's going to be a streaming event that you can check out next weekend. But if you want to hear more details on that, you can listen to that episode. Before that one, we chatted with Dario Evil, who is a good friend of ours from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And he is a young horror host that we had the privilege of chatting with and hearing about some of his history and love of horror and, how he's getting his name out there. So he's a really entertaining guy. I highly recommend checking out his YouTube channel. That's the Mausoleum of Terror, right?
Yep. Mausoleum of Terror. And just YouTube Dario Evil, Eville. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, you find the episode, of course, we have everything linked as always.
Yep. And plenty more good episodes before that, too. We've chatted with artists, with musicians, with, all sorts of different people that are in different creative lanes and have different outlets that they want to put out there for people to check out. So we really just want to help them and push what they got. So check out the old episodes and give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. We hope you're enjoying what we're putting out.
Speaking of what people think, it's Sunday morning, and we're recording this intro here. And like I said, you mentioned what people think. I think I'm even more excited for the Godzilla versus Kong movie because they just released a trailer this morning, and it looks fucking epic.
Yeah.
As soon as you get off here, you need to go look at it. It looks badass.
I will.
It's like the whole trailer is just Kong and Godzilla fucking duking it out, and it was awesome.
For anybody who doesn't know yet, it's coming out on March 26th.
March
it was
26th.
A few months.
I'm excited either way.
Yeah. Well, I know that's kind of your main thing that you're looking forward to right now. My main thing, and it's not necessarily a movie, but a video game. I don't rush out to buy video games, with the price that they are. Some are worth it. Sometimes you buy one and you're like, wow, I spent $60 on that and I beat it in 2 days. But this is a game that I will pay full price for. There is a Evil Dead video game coming out very, very soon. You can go on YouTube right now and watch the trailer for it. And it includes actual gameplay footage. You can basically play in a group of 4, with Ash and then Kelly, Pablo from the TV show. And one of the knights from Army of Darkness is also a featured character. So you can play as one of them, taking out all these deadites and finding different, artifacts and things to finish up the level. Or you can play as a deadite and possess the environment. You can possess the survivors and just swallow their souls one by one. So it sounds like a really fun game. I've heard that it's kind of a similar engine to Dead by Daylight. So it's like a survival type of thing. But in this one, you actually have weapons. You're not just hiding from the enemy. So, of course, you get to use, the boomstick, the chainsaw, and an assortment of other items.
That sounds pretty cool to me. Like, I mean, you're the gamer guy of the show, but I mean, it sounds like if you pick that game up, I might have to come by and check it out.
Yeah, at least come and watch me play or something.
For sure.
But yeah, it looks really fun. So check out the gameplay. Check out the trailer online right now. I know it's supposed to come out sometime this year. They haven't set a date, but it looks really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm sure a lot of our listeners here are horror fans. I mean, we're not a straight up horror show, but we do kind of lean towards it. But
we definitely specialize in some of that,
A lot of our friends and listeners are into horror, and as horror lovers like to collect shit. Whether it be toys, art. A lot of us collect clothes and horror movie swag. And if you're into,
we like to sport
stuff, it. If you're into that stuff, check out Fright Rags. Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003. And they have a wide range of products from your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics.
They have a hell of a lot of things there to offer. I honestly recommend checking it out. They really have something for everybody. If you're into horror, they got something for everyone there. I mean, they have collections from John Carpenter's Halloween, Universal Monsters, one of Steve's favorites, Night of the Living Dead, another top favorite of yours, Creep Show, one that I love and got into recently, the TV show. I mean, they offer things from the movies as well. Twin Peaks, Evil Dead, one of my big favorites, and so much more.
So much. They have a ton of stuff. You think of it, they got it. And it's all officially licensed and available now at frightrags.com. And of course, our Steve and Crypto Show listeners get 10% off when they use the code SteveCrypto10 at checkout.
Crypto10.
Steve Crypto 10. One more time. Steve
Crypto 10 at checkout. Out.
Sweet special effects provided by all our Buy Me a Coffee contributors.
So yeah, guys, I mean, really, if you're looking for some new, as some of you like to say, swag, then
Egg.
then head over to frightrags.com right now. I already have. I went and picked up an Evil Dead shirt myself. You know I had to. So, yeah, Steve Crypto 10. Use that code at checkout. We'll save you a few bucks.
Do it. Saving money is good. Saving money is real good. Before we get to the chat with Cullen and Blacky, anything else you want to throw in there?
Well, I wanted to mention that, you know, we've been kind of talking and figuring out some way to offer time to our listeners and you know, people to come on the show and kind of pitch what they've been working on, you know. So if any of you listening have a project or an album or a comic or a film or something, you know, paintings, whatever it might be, you know, send us a message online. You can always find us through the social media sites and you know, kind of pitch what you're doing, what you're working on. And we might be interested in featuring you on the show for a little promo thing, you know, just so we can help you get it out there to the public.
Sure, it's our main goal. That's why we started this show, to promote, you know, a lot of you guys, a lot of our friends, a lot of our future friends, a lot of amazing creators. Like, we want to promote you guys, so reach out and let's see what you got going on. And if we dig it, we'll definitely bring you on and have you do a little 10-15 minute spot to pitch your idea to our listeners. And who knows, maybe that right listener will hear about your thing, and before you know it, your movie's optioned in Hollywood and you're rich. And then you could buy us a lot of coffees at buymeacoffee.com/Steve Crypto.
Yeah, you know, we actually we just had our first little promo you know, session, as you could call it. I'm not going to tell you guys who it was yet, but it is someone that I enjoy listening to, and think he's a pretty entertaining person. So you'll have to stay tuned to our show and find out who that is. But I can tell you that it's a good one.
Definitely a good one. And you know how to listen to us because you are listening to us, but be sure to spread the word, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies, tell your kindergarten teachers, you know, tell your pastor. I don't care. Tell everybody to listen. Maybe not the pastor. He might not dig some of our work, but
well, you bumped into my kindergarten teacher not long ago, right?
I did. And
did you tell him?
He said you were kind of a little shithead, but
oh,
he didn't use them terms. He said you were a little kind of a mouthy little guy.
Oh, I'm sure.
He said you were a pain in the ass without the vulgarities. But hey, let's listen to the Cullen Bunn and Blacky Shepherd conversation about their ReAnimator Indiegogo.
Let's get to it.
Think you guys would dig it and definitely contribute to it.
Hello, this is Igoro, host of the Igoro Show, and you are listening to the Steve and Crypto Show. So keep your ears open and your mouth shut.
Hey guys, we're on the Steve and Crypto Show. We are lucky, and I feel kind of honored to have these guys on here. We have Cullen Bunn and Blacky Shepherd. Blacky is an old friend of ours from around the Northwest convention scene, and you've seen his work in a lot of really popular franchises. He's done work with for Transformers comics, some Voltron comics, which he worked on a miniseries with Cullen a couple years ago. He did Pumpkinhead, one of my favorites, Vampirella. He's worked on. He's even been on he's been one of our guests at the comic book swap meet, the little mini con that we put on up here in the woods in Washington. And then Cullen's worked on everything from all the major comic companies. He's done some Deadpool stuff, X-Men. People really liked the Magneto series he wrote, and then he's done a lot of horror stuff, Army of Darkness, Harrow County, and then, like I mentioned, the Voltron thing with Blacky before. Now, before we jump into the Indiegogo for the ReAnimator comic you guys put together, how did you guys connect initially to work together?
So, many years back, it feels like many years back, I was approached by Dynamite to do a number of comics, including a Voltron comic. And they got me in touch with Blacky. I mean, that's the way I remember it, right? I mean, is that they connected us originally, didn't they?
Yeah, I woke up to an email from our editor at Dynamite, and it was weird. She said it was because the email was worded as though I was going to turn this down, which at that point I'd done 6 or 7 pages in a Vampirella anthology. I was completely new to the industry, so it was my first real series of any merit, and it was with Cullen, and she didn't even mention the name of the project at first. She just said something like, "I've got this thing. It's these robots that turn into a big robot." And then and it was like 2 paragraphs down. She said, "And if you're interested in doing this Voltron project, just let me know." Talk about bury the lead, but yeah, so they put me on that. And that was the first time that I'd worked with Cullen.
So
yeah, we met sometime after that, I think in San Diego. For the first time, maybe that year, later that year.
I stalked you around San Diego, the first time. And then I think the second time we actually managed to hang out for a minute.
Right.
So like you said, you were pretty new being published, but were you a fan of Cullen's work before this?
Yeah. So I had already read Sixth Gun, and then I think I'd read his Conan series. Cullen, do you remember if your Conan series for Dark Horse had come out by then?
I don't remember. I'm actually working on. Well, that came out in 2017 is when the Conan book came out.
Oh no, then no. So I know I'd read Sixth Gun, and I think I'd read something else. It might have been one of his Deadpools or one of his Marvel series. But my main focus was on Sixth Gun. I really was into Sixth Gun. And so then when they mentioned Cullen Bunn in the email, I thought, wow, that name sounds really familiar, because I'm not a huge superhero guy, right? So it took me a second to put it together. And if I remember correctly, Harrow County had just started. But my recollection for dates is out the back of my head, so I don't know if that's right or not. The only thing I can guarantee for sure was that I had read Sixth Gun.
Yeah, I don't remember if Harrow County. I think Harrow County might have started. But I'm actually today I'm working on a bibliography of like a chronology of all my comic stuff, and because I've never tracked when everything came out, and I haven't got it. I mean, I'm only maybe a fourth of the way through putting that thing together, so I'm not sure even.
That's
you got a big job.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be quite a job, being pretty prolific.
Yeah.
Seems like every week is like there's another book coming out with your name on it, so it's like, wow.
Once upon a time, that was the case. Yeah, once upon a time, that was definitely the case. It's definitely not the case anymore. I mean, the last couple of years. So.
You guys also did work on a ReAnimator project prior, the ReAnimator Vampirella series. How did that come to be, and was it like a publisher pitched project, or was it something you guys brainstormed on and pitched it to them?
I was at Crypticon, here in Seattle, a few years ago, and ran into Barbara Crampton, and I've been enamored of Barbara Crampton, for years, and it was just kind of one of those things. While I was talking to her, I in the back of my head, the math happened. I thought, oh, Dynamite has been putting out ReAnimator comics for a long time. And then, they've got Vampirella as well. And Dynamite really, really likes its crossovers. And so it just kind of occurred to me that Dynamite had never crossed over Vampirella and ReAnimator. It seemed like a perfect fit. So I kind of came up with an extremely loose concept, and pitched it to, Dynamite at San Diego that year. And it came down to, well, if you can get Cullen to write it, then we'll do it, So I think I sent Cullen a text,
A virtual arm twist.
Yeah. How much arm twisting did it require?
I don't remember being too resistant to the idea. It was the right time, and I'm from a nostalgia point of view, I'm a fan of Vampirella, and I'm a fan of the ReAnimator property, obviously. So it didn't require a whole lot of arm twisting. It was it struck at really probably the exact right time for me to take a project like that.
The biggest struggle that I remember was trying to hammer out how many issues it was going to be. I was really hoping for like a 6-issue series because I thought there was a pretty big story that we could wring out of it, but I think they wound up going with 4 issues.
Yeah, it was originally a bigger series, and this is some of the behind the scenes stuff because that people don't see, because if you remember, Blacky, when we were putting that together, we had an idea to set up an entire reboot of the Vampirella universe.
Yeah,
and
that was my hope.
Yeah, that was the thing you were really pushing for, was this big, this idea to reboot the universe and start telling these stories from the ground up. Unfortunately, there was already other plans in the works. So
I think we were about 30 days too late with respect to the concept of a big reboot, because I know when we pitched it to them, they said we kind of just signed the deal to do the new ongoing series, and so I think we barely missed it.
That would have been
that's what I'm gonna.
That would have been a nice way to put you on the map for sure.
I ain't gonna lie,
but you guys were still working in your lane and still putting some new life into Vampirella, in your own lane. Mm-hmm. And so there's plenty of people that are recognizing that anyway.
I gotta admit, I had some great ideas for that relaunch. That's really the thing I was most excited about. I mean, I like the project, the crossover project just fine. But the thing I was most excited about going into it was all these ideas Blacky had to kind of, do this big, relaunch. And that was the thing that drew me into the project probably more than anything else was that.
I've been a Vampirella fan for my whole life. The first thing I ever did wrong was I stole a copy of the Vampirella magazine from the local, gas and sip when I was 9 or 10 maybe. And so I've loved that character for a long time. And at the time, anyway, Vampirella was a little bit dormant at Dynamite. And so I immediately, once they said yes to, cracking the door open, I tried to bludgeon the door to open the rest of the way. And I ain't gonna lie, I think the ideas that we came up with were pretty strong ideas. Had Dynamite gone with them, I think it'd have been pretty well received.
Is there ever any chance maybe down the road to pitching it again, or?
I'm a fan of never saying never. Yeah. Now, whether or not they would ever say yes, is a story entirely.
Yeah. Right. Well, we are here to discuss ReAnimator The Eternal Lie. So, tell us about how this came together, and let's roll from there.
Yeah, so it's a book that came together. I was talking to the folks at Dynamite about doing something. I had the last thing I'd done with them was the Vampirella ReAnimator crossover that we were just talking about. We were talking about doing something else, and the idea of doing a ReAnimator book came up, and I suggested Blacky as the artist on it. I thought he'd be a great artist for this concept, and it went through a lot of different, what format's it going to take. But the big thing that I really wanted to do with this series is, to some degree, take Herbert West ReAnimator back to formula. I didn't want to do, I love the movies. I've read so many of the comics. We did a ReAnimator comic, modern day ReAnimator, but I didn't want to do a modern day ReAnimator story. I wanted to take it back. I wanted to strip everything back down and do a story that was more direct and more accurate, I guess, sequel to the original short story. So this version of ReAnimator that appears in The Eternal Lie is not tied into the continuity of other comics that you've read. It's a new continuity. It's rebooting that. It's set in the 1920s, takes place just a few years after the original short story ends. And then the other thing that I wanted to do with it was tie it into the Cthulhu mythos in a bigger way. ReAnimator has never been part necessarily of the Cthulhu mythos, but I wanted to do a story where it would be tied into that bigger mythology, so that we could get some squishy monsters in it. And that's really where it's. I mean, I suggested Blacky as the artist, and they said give him a call and see if he's interested. And I called Blacky and said it's the ReAnimator fairy calling with a special delivery.
I think that's a quote, actually. I think that's a verbatim quote.
Yeah. And we were off to the races. And it's still, even after that, it went through a lot of, there was a lot of back and forth about what format it would take, where, how it would be put out, and it finally landed on this idea of Dynamite wanting to crowdfund it, which is where we are right now.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about the ReAnimator, I did want to ask if either of you have any early memories with horror and ReAnimator in general, just that kind of got you into into that series, and any early comic memories as well.
My first exposure to Herbert West was actually not from the movies. So I was one of those weird little kids that read all the time. And I had been given a collection. I'm sure you've seen them. They came out in the early 80s. They had the kind of black and white with like red covers. They were all the covers of each volume was done by the same artist,
Michael Whalen. Yeah,
Michael Whalen. Yeah. And I was given that series. And if I remember correctly, Herbert West ReAnimator appeared in one of those volumes. And I just kind of read through the whole, all 4 or 5 volumes or whatever. And Herbert West ReAnimator was one of the ones that stuck out for me because just prior to that, I had read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And so the parallels between the two really kind of struck me. Because Frankenstein's monster's always been one of my favorites, and so it was shortly after that I saw the ReAnimator film on cable. One night when I was probably 11 years old, and it blew my mind, of course, and so I was already a horror nerd. And a kind of a gore hound, and that just cemented it, So I've always, since I was 10 or 11 years old, not only enjoyed the H.P. Lovecraft version of ReAnimator, but also the other versions of ReAnimator, because he's a public domain character, you can find different versions of Herbert West through all media. There's a lot of comics, there's crazy movies that have been put out, there's board games, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I think I was also exposed to the Lovecraft stories in those black and white.
I think everybody was.
Yeah, the series that Michael Whalen did the covers for. I don't think I read the ReAnimator story in those. I first was exposed to the Cthulhu mythos in an old copy of Dungeons and Dragons, Deities and Demigods. Because it's a collection of books that give stats for all the pantheons of different gods. So it's got the Greek gods, and it's got the Asgardian gods, and the Chinese gods, and all this thing. And you get your stats. And the original edition of that book had the Cthulhu mythos in there, so it had stats for D&D for all the Cthulhu mythos, and that's where I first discovered them. And it was a super magical experience, to be honest, because I loaned that book to somebody and they lost the book. And when I replaced my copy, I managed to save up my allowance and replace my copy. The Cthulhu mythos had been taken out of it. So they were no longer in that book. So it gave it sort of this mystique in a lot of ways. And then, then later I got into the short stories, but I did not, read the ReAnimator story until after I had seen the movie. I read about the movie in an issue of Fangoria or something and tracked down the movie and then read the story, that it was based on. So, Fangoria, I guess, was my first exposure to the ReAnimator movie, really. And then I ended up watching the movie, renting it, like we all did out of not a Blockbuster, but a corner video store that was, wedged in there between the drugstore and the grocery store. And that's where I first saw that movie.
I think I probably ran into stills of it from Fangoria as well before I saw it. Now that you mention it, because I vaguely remember that D&D Monster Manual version of them as well. But I didn't put two and two together. I think I saw those first well before I'd even found out kind of what the mythos were, so I thought, wow, those are neat. And then, kept going to the next, group of monsters.
Well, Fangoria is a great source, to first discover it. And since you mentioned, that you read it and then saw the movie, kind of curious, as a lot of us will read the book and then see the film or vice versa. We often say, the book's better, it's more detail or whatever. How'd you guys feel the first time, like in comparison? The visual of the film, did you enjoy that, or just reading the book and using your imagination? What do you prefer?
Well, the story is so much different than the movie. Only the bones of the story exist in the film. Aside from Herbert West and the narrator and Dean Halsey, I think everybody else is complete fabrication of Stuart Gordon and the movie. Now, I could be wrong. There might be a couple of ancillary characters here and there that show up in the short stories as well. And also because the short stories were episodic, and the movie wasn't, there's a lot that happens in the short stories that isn't present in the film. Plus a lot of inner monologue and, because in the short stories, Herbert West is the object of description by the narrator. The narrator is telling you about Herbert West, and he's telling you about what happened as he went through these experiences with Herbert West, which is different than the, I guess, omnipotent observer that is the film. It's not from the narrator's perspective so much. And so they were really different, and I almost didn't connect the two. I knew that they were both from the same thing, but they're not even set in the same time period. So they really didn't equate for me.
Yeah, I was at the time I watched the movie, I was becoming a big fan. I was a big fan of horror movies in general. I wanted to, I don't know if this was when I watched this movie, but it was not too long, after that. My original, one of my goals in life was to become a special effects makeup artist. That was my plan after high school. And
hold on, let me interrupt you, Cullen. Did you ever have the Dick Smith makeup kit?
I got a copy of it right here. Yeah,
dude, I was the same. That was my first big goal, was to be a special effects makeup artist, and I got that Dick Smith makeup kit.
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
Yeah, I've got that and the Tom Savini book over here, and all. I've got there was a book that came out when I was very young. It was like Scholastic Weekly Reader, and I have a copy of it somewhere. But it was this green book that told you how to do monster makeup for all the Universal monsters. Sort of a low, like it was like, take a paper bag and put it on your head, and you'll become the. But then it had a play in the back. It was like telling you how to do a monster play. And that book, even from a young age, I was fascinated by that stuff. But then, with Fangoria and Gorezone magazines, so I was a big Stuart Gordon, Brian Yuzna fan for, ReAnimator and From Beyond and stories like that. So I had I had sort of a cemented look when I finally read the short story. And I thought there was more in the short story that they used in the movie than I expected. I expected it to be very, very different. And yes, it was different, but there was a lot of stuff in the short story that they used, so I was a little surprised of that. But yeah, to Blacky's point, yeah, the narrator is the guy who tells the story of Herbert West. And we picked that up in our comic. That same narrator is the guy who tells the story of Herbert West. And it's not the guy that is the narrator character in the movie. It's a different, it's that role there was a guy that played that role in the movie, but it wasn't that character.
Yeah. And in the movie, they name him, and his name is Dan, whereas in the stories, he's never referred to by name.
He has no name.
He's just the narrator.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, just curious, are there any other Lovecraft, comics or stories or anything that you guys would like to work on in the future if you had the chance, or just a fun project, is there a different one aside from ReAnimator that you would like to touch up on?
Well, I don't know that I have a big interest in adapting any of the Lovecraft stories. I'm not it's just not what I'm into, and there are some great adaptations of those stories anyway, so I don't need to do that. And I don't know that besides ReAnimator, I don't know that I would really rush out to do a sequel to one of the Lovecraft stories. It felt right for this project. I could definitely see myself telling stories using the Cthulhu mythos. But in some cases, some of the stuff I like, some of the stuff I'd want to do is not even, that's considered Cthulhu mythos stuff. It didn't even originate from Lovecraft. It was, I'm fascinated by Carcosa and the King in Yellow and those concepts. And those were developed by other writers. They weren't Lovecraft stories. And some of that mythology has just been developed now, not only in stories by numerous writers, but yes, in film, but in the role-playing game side of things has just gone off and has delved into that stuff in ways that most people wouldn't expect, because they think of stats, they think of, okay, here's how to fight Cthulhu. But, there are books and books right here to my left, that are deep dives into the mythology and the philosophy of these mythos. Thousands of pages of it that that actually came to life from role-playing game stuff. There was the Chaosium stuff that did the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game went into it. But then there was a company that came out in the 90s called Pagan Publishing that just did some amazing, thought work on the mythology. And that stuff's there. So a lot of that stuff, I wouldn't mind digging into, but I also wouldn't mind just developing my own cosmic, I have my own thoughts of sort of a cosmic order of horrific beings that would definitely be inspired by that kind of thing, but would be new characters and new material.
Right.
I'm somewhat similar to Cullen in that regard, insofar as, with a couple of specific exceptions, I'm more interested in carving out my own space within the mythos than I am trying to adapt or sequelize existing stuff that has already been written. Now, the exceptions to that are, I really want to do a comic book version of the Doom that came to Sarnath. That's just always been a favorite. And at some time in the future, whether I'm doing it with a publisher or a writer or whatever, I'm going to do a hand-painted short comic of the Nyarlathotep poem. That's just, that is a kind of a North Star for me as far as horror is concerned, but if I were to ever dip my toes into the mythos with respect to making something new, I would probably want to go the True Detective route. So that first season of True Detective, in my mind, is almost a perfect continuation of the Lovecraft mythos, because it's very grounded in reality, and it's kind of like the mythos are blink and you'll miss it. Like, one of my favorite scenes from that, and something that kind of defines for me the way to approach, pushing the mythos forward, is in, I can't remember his, in Rust Cole's apartment. He doesn't have any mirrors, right? And except for he's got one small nickel-sized mirror on the wall. And I thought about that for a long time. And then I realized that most likely, they never talk about it in the series, but most likely it's because Rust is a dreamer, right? A capital D dreamer, according to the mythos. That is to say, if he looks in a mirror, he might see the dreamlands, and that would further separate him from his own sanity, right? So he doesn't have a normal sized mirror in his house. When he's got to brush his teeth, he's got this little tiny that he just kind of this number, and that to me, and then the overall tone and grounding that the first season of True Detective had, that to me is my speed. If I were going to do something in the mythos, I would want it to be like that, kind of a gritty, realistic depiction of the separation from sanity that a real human being would go through when faced with this evil that can't really be described, and most people would just assume isn't real. That to me is more interesting than, doing a sequel to, The Shadow over Innsmouth, or, something like that.
Right. Well, so it definitely sounds like you don't really want to do direct sequel of anything else, but you both are well read and deep into the Lovecraft mythos. How did you dig in to this for like your scenery and stuff for The Eternal Lie?
Well, I went from two places. I went from, obviously Cullen's descriptions, because his scripts are very good at giving the artist a sense of what he's looking for visually and tonally. And then I also, being a longtime reader of that fiction as well, I realized, okay, well, the parts that take place in this location, because it's the first time I've gotten the opportunity to draw those locations, it was very important for me to capture the tone and the feel of them, right? So when I'm drawing Innsmouth, I'm pretty familiar with how Innsmouth should look and feel. So it was really important to me to get into the detail of it and the grime of it. Probably to the detriment of my deadlines, because I would spend hours and hours and hours drawing bricks and cracks in bricks and fractures in wood and stuff that I'm the only person in the world that's going to notice, but it was really important to me to have that there, because in my mind, every little crack that shows is one more way of selling the decrepitude of that location.
Right.
And from the comic point of view, I wanted this to be, when we encounter these other entities of the mythos, or when they show up in the story, I wanted them to be the versions, for the most part, that people would recognize, that people would know what they're looking at when they see it. But there are some occasions where, I think we even said this is, and I'm not going to name the creature, but there's this creature and we don't want it to look like it's been depicted in 1,000, other versions of, this entity. And Blacky took that and ran with it. There, one of my favorite moments in the comics is that instance where Blacky took this, almost this non-description, to be honest, and just went out and just blew it out of the water, so to speak, pun intended.
So, let's, can you give us a little, quick synopsis of the story in the comic?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, this takes place a few years after the original short story. Now, if you don't read the short story, you probably know enough about ReAnimator to read it anyway. Herbert West is a scientist who has created a formula that reanimates the dead, and it has usually bad side effects. At the end of the original story, Herbert West is believed dead, but a few years later in our story, he shows back up on the doorstep of our narrator character. I call him the narrator because, as in the original comic, we don't really name him, or in the original short story, and realizes that he has a problem. Someone has stolen his formula, and they are using it for nefarious purposes, and Herbert West wants to track that group down and retrieve his formula. And that mystery leads them to Innsmouth, this decrepit town that Blacky mentioned, and into a much bigger, crazier story. Because what they have planned for this formula is awful in a big way.
To put it mildly. Yeah. That's the thing. So when I read the script, and I say this and it sounds like I'm just, stroking Cullen's ego, but, if I were to completely divorce myself from being part of the creative team and I was just reading the script, it's a mind-blowing concept, that this story is building towards, so much so that, as I love this first volume. I'm fond of the work that both of us have done. I'm fond of the work that the colorist Ellie Wright has done. Taylor Esposito lettered the absolute hell out of it. It's a great book, right? But it's only the first half of the story, right? And the second half of the story is where people's minds are going to get blown completely out of the back of their head. And so that has been my overriding goal from day one, is to get that second half of the story told, which is why, I'm really focused on trying to make the Indiegogo campaign as successful as possible, because it's got to hit a certain level before they'll greenlight, the second half of the story.
So there actually is plans for a follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
There's plans for a follow-up, and to be honest, I think this is the kind of story that if readers really got into it and really wanted it, this is something we could tell in a big way. I mean, it could be a really big sort of epic storyline that starts here. But yeah, as Blacky mentioned, I think the first, the comic that we're we're crowdfunding right now for Dynamite, is a satisfying read. I think there's some interesting stuff there, but there's no point in disguising it. It leaves on a pretty big reveal, and the success of the campaign, the book's funded. That's awesome. But the real success of the campaign for Blacky and myself is we want to get to the point where they say, yeah, let's go ahead and do a second one. And I don't even know what the tipping point is, but I know that we need to reach a certain point that they say, we're going to go ahead and greenlight the next book in the arc. And then beyond that, who knows? I think it could go further. I think it could go numerous books, in a big way. But like I said, I think it's a satisfying read. I think it gives the reader some stuff to think about and some interesting ideas in this first one, but there's definitely more story to it. And that's what we need. We need the campaign to be successful in order to get to that.
Well, it definitely looks like the campaign is going pretty good so far. It looks like you guys are pretty close to 1,000% funded, which is pretty cool. Hopefully that definitely opens the door up for more to this story.
One would hope. That you guys only have like 15 days left according to the website, right?
Yeah, we're at basically halfway to the finish line right now.
Great.
Right. So let's talk more about the campaign. What are most of these crowdfunding campaigns come with a lot of really cool perks and stuff. What are some of the cool things you guys are putting out there?
Well, there's multiple covers. There's a cover by Francesco Francavilla that's rad. I did 3 covers for it. So there's a kind of a very, graphic skull cover. There's a crossover cover that's got Lady Demon and Vampirella and Herbert West. And then the standard cover, which is Herbert West. There's, they're offering the original art for 2 of my 3 covers. One of which I think has already sold. And then I'm doing, sketch covers and original drawings for people if they pledge at a certain level. There's an enamel pin. There's a pen, that looks like
those look awesome.
Yeah, the pens are cool.
Yeah. There's metal covers. I think, Cullen, are you still doing sketches for people?
I believe so. I think that's still on the table there. Yeah, like remarked covers. If you really want to, a remarked cover from me, okay, buckle up. So, but yeah, and then I think they have add-ons. They have a board game that they produced. Is one of the add-ons is a ReAnimator board game. They have CGC slabbed and graded versions of the comics that you can add on. So there's a lot of very cool, cool.
I think there's a level where you can get the other trade paperbacks that we have worked on as well, right?
You definitely get Vampirella meets ReAnimator. Yeah,
that's cool. What is the final date? When is the Indiegogo campaign end?
Boy, 15 days from today.
So
yeah, someone told me. I think that Indiegogo. I've never done an Indiegogo campaign. I've only done Kickstarter campaigns, so that's what that's what I'm familiar with. But I was talking to someone from Dynamite, and they said they think it ends on the 7th or the 8th. It could be one, that it's a little less in concrete with Indiegogo. So I'm going to say the 7th so is when it ends. But yeah, it's but it's definitely, it's live right now.
All right, so before we close out here, how would you both pitch this campaign to just a random unknown, somebody who is not familiar with the story or into comics? Like, how would you pitch it to just a regular person?
I'll let Cullen handle that. He's the rapper. I'm the DJ.
Yeah, this is a horror comic. it takes a simple concept of a guy who wants to use a formula to turn back death. His goal is to conquer death, and he has taken that to an extreme, and it's obsessed him, and it has it's consumed him in a lot of ways and changed his life and ruined his life. That's Herbert West. Now he's in a situation where this formula that he's dedicated his life to turning back death and defeating death, he's in a situation now where this formula can do that, and he needs to stop it because it's getting ready to be used in a way that even he, a man of science, a man dedicated to really stretching the boundaries, it's getting ready to be used in a way that he can't fathom and he can't abide. And we get to see how this obsession of his has changed his life. And when you take someone who go to any lengths to meet a goal, and this goal for him is to stop death, to actually defeat death, and he'll go to any length to do that. What you have to, at this point, what would cause him to say, nope, that's enough. I cannot take that one more step towards defeating death because this is more terrible than anything I could have imagined. And that's what the story's about.
Sold.
Yeah, that about says it all.
Yeah, for sure. Well, where can we find the campaign? Do either of you guys know the?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you the address, but it's a long rambling.
We'll definitely post all that and everything.
Yeah.
But
if you go to Indiegogo and search it, search ReAnimator The Eternal Lie, it's going to pop up. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see me talk about it a few times, and you'll see it pop up. Or my e-newsletter, it's always right there in the e-newsletter every issue. With links, and I'm sure Blacky, it's the same with you with Twitter, and I know you also use
Instagram. Yeah, so if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, on Twitter I'm at CQ Shep, and on Instagram I'm ArtDevil313. If you follow either one of those, I won't shut up about it. So you'll definitely run into it on one of my accounts.
Sounds like us in our podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta push your stuff out there.
That's right.
But so we'll make sure to link you guys up on everything, and especially for the Indiegogo campaign. And I thank you guys for visiting us on the Steve and Crypto Show.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for taking the time. I know you guys are busy. Anything else you want to add? You guys, either you're working on anything else you want to mention real quick, or let's just stick to this campaign.
It's all about ReAnimator. I'm pushing that ReAnimator loving right now.
Right.
Yeah, I have a ton of books that'll be coming out this year. Most of them have not been announced yet. But like I mentioned earlier, if you follow me on Twitter, it's just at Cullen Bunn, super easy to find. Or if you follow my e-newsletter, which comes out every Sunday morning, you'll see a list. I put basically hints of everything that I'm working on, and a rough schedule when you might find out more about it. But that's the best way to keep track of all that stuff.
Cool. Well, I thank you guys again. Everybody listening, go check out the campaign for the ReAnimator comic. It's going to be a good one. I know I already went in and contributed, and I'm getting my cool syringe pen, which I'm really excited about.
I just want those syringe pens. I need them to. I need a big collection of those syringe pens because they're
right.
Cool.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Well, hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Hey, thanks again for listening. Thank you to Cullen Bunn and Blacky Shepherd for hanging out and telling us about the Indiegogo campaign for ReAnimator The Eternal Lie. It sounds like it's going to be pretty awesome. You guys check it out, contribute to it, help them get this book out there and keep the story going. And swing by our Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/SteveCrypto and help us out on the show. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. Keep spreading the word, sharing our episodes on social media, and thanks. We are the Steve and Crypto Show, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.